I am unashamed. What about you?
I don't shop. And look, I don't have any, any stake in Dollar General, but I love Dollar General. They're everywhere. They got everything you need. Right now, in my truck, I'm headed to South Louisiana. I'm fixed to go film our show. Well, when you go to rural type areas, because you know what you do when you first go to any out of town destination. What's the first thing you got to do? Y'all don't know? You determine. I thought y'all would know this. So we say, we're going on a trip. I'm going to stay there 4 days. We're going to film. What is the first bit of information you have to figure out?
What am I going to wear?
No. I mean, I wear the same clothes all the time.
I know.
What are we going to do about the coffee?
That is true.
You're right. What is the coffee situation? Well, where I'm headed, there's no, what's the Statue of Liberty? Starbucks. No. So I said, well, I got to have a coffee maker.
Statue of Liberty.
Isn't that a picture of the Statue of Liberty?
I think it's like some kind of goddess of something else. Yeah.
So I said, you know what? I asked Missy last night, I was like, does Dollar General sell coffee makers? She's like, I do not know, Jace. I was like,
I bet Missy doesn't go to Dollar General.
She likes Dollar General.
Oh, does she?
She does. She likes it.
I thought it might be a little bit.
No, she is a fan. So I said, you know what? I'm going to have faith. And it's only 2 minutes away. I went up there, $18.
They had one.
It's in my truck, still in the box. I mean, you just can't beat them. So anyway, about 2 weeks ago, I go up there, and there's a couple, and I'd say they're, in their 60s. It's like a Friday night. The parking lot was almost empty, which is why I like it.
Yeah,
and
because it's like a shrunken Walmart into a little bit bigger than a convenience store size. And it's easy to get in.
Well, it's a lot smaller than Walmart now.
Well, that's what I mean, a really shrunken.
But look, here's what I love about them is they only have like 1 or 2 employees there at any time. But they've got more stuff slammed together.
Which when you walk through there, it's only about 3 foot wide in between all the aisles.
Yeah, it just looks like it's like the messy kid's room. But it's a good kid.
But they have to have 2 people, Jace, working there because one's always smoking out front.
That's right.
So the other one's covered inside.
So anyway,
I have a smoking back and forth.
Yeah, so I see a couple. So like they met there. So there's a woman, because there's very few people, so I noticed this. And there's a guy in there. He parked right in the front of the store, and she parked like out toward the main road. And they're like going to each other to greet. So I'm like,
so they met.
All I thought was, hey, let's meet at Dollar General.
Yeah.
It's a good place to meet and go do whatever.
Right.
So I go in there and buy my stuff. When I come out, well, now they got a blanket on the tailgate, and they're all hugged up. It's clear, clear night.
So they met.
Look, I'm gonna admit I made it awkward because I thought, I can't unsee this. Because then I thought, okay, I'll meet you at Dollar General. Let's look at the stars in the parking lot.
Who's bringing the blanket?
And so I looked at them. They looked at me because I stopped walking. And I said, America. And they nodded and just, I went and got in the truck. I thought, this is awesome.
Jace, you run up on some strange things.
Oh, that's pretty good. I've never seen that. The date night at the Dollar General.
They had a date night at the Dollar General parking lot. But when you think about it, it makes sense.
You might not want to delve into what all that was about and who she was blown to.
It was in public. They weren't doing it. I mean, they were just hugged up on a tailgate at Dollar General. But I thought, you know what? It makes sense because this was a economical date.
It's free.
And so where else better to go in case you need something for the party? Dollar General.
Dollar General.
You can't get any more
If you need a
that.
snack.
Love springs forth from some strange areas.
So I was convinced. I told that story here, so y'all let us know if I did. But that happened, and look, I felt good about it.
That's right.
Yeah.
I went home. Missy's like, "Why are you all?" I was like, I love this place."
Yeah.
And I said, 2 people. I just saw 2 people on a date at Dollar General. Of course, then you know what she said? Well, how do you know they were on a date? I said, because they were on a tailgate under a blanket all hugged up
Yeah, watching the stars.
at Dollar General.
Yeah.
They'd probably gone in and bought them a nice bottle of wine, about $3, and you
I didn't see any wine.
they sell the wine there now.
Oh,
I don't know the tailgate in the parking lot of a place like that. I don't know whether they were. I don't know what.
Well, I
Dad
didn't know
said
what-
it is more sinister.
I
Jason.
didn't. No, look, Phil. It looked romantic.
Yeah.
I liked it.
Right.
I mean, I gave him an America. I don't know why I said that.
It's better than robbing and looting and shooting.
That's what's funny, Phil.
is
Is I
true,
try
man.
to tell a happy, feel good story, and for some reason, you're like, I don't believe you.
They were up to no good. Rioting
'Cause
and
I'm
looting.
like, I don't think they're cheating on their spouses. Not right here by one of the main roads, Dollar General, for the whole world to see. I just think they said, hey, it's been a long day. Let's go to Dollar
Yeah.
General and hang
Hey.
out.
That's right. See, Dad, this is what happens in town.
Yeah.
You're out here, so you would never know about these things like
Nope,
this. But
nope.
when you go to town, these are the kind of things you see.
Yep.
So just so you know.
Well, I hate to miss it, but
Well, Jace, you've never told that story before, so
Well, we'll
not,
see.
not in my presence.
We'll
so.
see, because I'm
Well, you're right. If you did, Unashamed Nation will let us know.
pretty sure I did. And so,
So if anybody's if you can back Jace up and you've heard this story, let us know. Email Zach and let him know. So
yeah, we need to get Dollar General to be a sponsor on the podcast, because I've given them love, the last 2.
you're right, they should be. But they back in the day, they bought a lot of Duck Dynasty stuff and Duck Commander stuff. Back when the show was on. So it's it's
Really?
definitely our kind of store. They're more rural. They're I've been to many towns to speak, and all over America. And there'll be some little town. There's one convenience store, but you know what's always there, Jay? There's always a Dollar General. I mean, now almost every small town in America at least has a DG.
I wonder who owns that.
I don't know, somebody in Tennessee. They're based in Tennessee, I think.
Yeah, why not?
But they have, at the time back when we were doing business with them, because I worked for Duck Commander then, this has only been 5 or 6 years ago. At that time, they had 11,000 stores.
No, I was seeing how many there are right
Yeah, check it out, because it was 11,000 a few years ago. But think about that just a minute. I mean, like Walmart at the same time had 2,000.
You know how many they have now? 18,216. Well, that was back in April, so they may.
I mean, so you're
incredible.
going toward 20,000. See how many Walmarts there are. I guarantee there's not more than 3,000 or 4,000 Walmart.
About 5, I think.
No.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I know how many Walmart. There was about.
When we were
there was
doing
about
business with them, it was
3,000.
about 2,000. So maybe
No, it was
5
more than
now.
that, because I remember it being the one year, we got the duck call by mistake in all the Walmart stores. Which, Phil, if that hadn't happened, probably Duck Commander would have gone bankrupt. I mean, that one year was a catalyst for a lot of other slow
It
years.
was.
I have shared that story, but a computer glitch caused all Walmart stores to order the duck calls one year. And so I called up there and tried to say, hey, I think we've made a mistake, because it was
That
all
duck
we
call
could
was
do.
going into areas that nobody even heard of a duck.
We're probably not going to send any duck calls.
What was amazing is
Boston, Mass,
the
or
buyer finally bought it, did all the set up the deals. He says, amazingly, we did far better than we thought.
Yeah,
we
they actually sold them.
So Walmart has 10,500 stores now.
Whew.
So they have
Boy, they've come a long way since we were there.
quadrupled since we did business with them back in the day.
Yeah.
That's
I
pretty
drove
amazing.
around in my pickup truck, driving from Walmart to Walmart before, and after about a year or two of that, a couple of years, got a phone call, and the buyer said, how are you getting your products in our stores? I said, one at a time in the back of my pickup truck.
Yeah.
He said, that's how you're stocking our stores? I said, well, by the way, who are you? He said, I'm the buyer you're supposed to be going through. I said, oh, well, good to talk to you. But Jace, that was turned over to Jace, and he dealt with him.
Jace was the buyer for.
Did a good
the
job,
seller
Jace.
for
Yeah,
years.
you wouldn't want to watch that at home.
Yeah.
But you know what's funny now?
You had to be willing to lose.
And I may be mistaken. So you think about 10,500 stores, and then you have big box stores, outdoor industry, Academy, Cabela's, and Bass Pro now all under one head. Of course, a lot of those weren't even in business when we were back in the day. But now, you know who I think, the last I heard, the number one seller of our duck calls is all digital, all online. Amazon.
I'm not shocked. That's where it's going now.
It just, I don't know, it seems weird to us because for so many years, you used to drive around and sell them at a store. And now the idea is most of it's going directly to people's homes.
Oh, I know why you wanted me to tell that story, because it was a romantic story at Dollar General. It's kind of inspiration. And we're in Mark 14.
Perfect
And there's
segue.
actually, I have some ideas about this that may make people uncomfortable, which is perfectly comfortable to me.
That's right.
Because I just really believe this. This was Jesus called this a beautiful story.
And we've been dealing with the last two chapters about the temple because he's kind of centered everything there because he is turning everything upside down, literally, in the temple. Now we're sort of making that next shift into the events that lead up to his death. So that's the significance as we get to chapter 14 contextually is now he's like, okay, we're here. It's about to happen. So everything that happens now as we go forward is all leading to his death, his burial, and his resurrection, and his ascension. So just to set the table for you, Jay.
Yeah, you're right. One of these versions, she has done a beautiful thing. Yeah, that's in it's in Mark, in 14:6, when he said, she has done a beautiful thing to me.
Yeah.
It's a rare phrase to see Jesus refer something, as a beautiful.
That may be the only place, I didn't research it, but there may be probably the only place where you see him say that.
Yeah,
You know?
I think so.
It's quite. Look, it's an intimate. Now, I'm going to set this up because, and I listened to a lot of sermons and read commentaries about this, and this is one of those stories where you kind of got to get the idea of what it was like being a woman with a checkered past and having this kind of public display. This was quite a move for somebody to do.
Yeah.
And
It would have been considered in this context scandalous.
exactly.
Would be the word I would use to describe it. Hang on before you tell. Let's take a break. So as I get older, along with these other fellows, you start to realize, the hairline starts to go back, the middle starts to expand a little bit. Things start happening. One of the unfortunate things is a lot of people realize this far too early. At least for me, it's into my 50s. Some of you guys in your 30s, you notice that you have hair loss. And so one of our longtime sponsors is a company called Keeps. And what they're in business to do is to help you keep your hair before you lose it. Can't do much about it once it's gone. So they understand that. They have a clinically proven, FDA-approved hair loss treatment. It's all online, so you don't have to go anywhere. You can order it from right on your couch. It prevents hair loss. It stimulates hair growth, and it helps take better care of the hair that you have. They have a medical provider to make sure all their products are personalized for what works for you. This provider will also be available 24/7 if you have any questions. So you don't have to go to the pharmacy, no waiting rooms, half the cost to be able to keep your hair. So if you're ready to take action, join thousands of guys who have saved their hair with Keeps. Go to keeps.com/door for 50% off your first order. That's KEEPS.com/door, keeps.com/door.
Which is why, unbelievers and anti-Jesus type people try to make more out of this, in a
Well, they
kind
actually
of in a sexual way.
they actually made one of the movies about Jesus.
Oh yeah, and they got it
included
from here.
this. Yeah,
And I'll address that here too. It's because, God, I've said this many times, and we've all agreed, God is the architect of male and female. This is quoted many times. And Jesus, when they were coming to him trying to trap him, he always goes back to the beginning where it's like, well, did not God make them male and female? And you remember the context of Adam and Eve, there was no shame, until sin occurred. And even in the marriage context today, and I was fortunate enough to be a virgin when I got married, and my wife was too. And I've spoken many times about that, but it's shame free. So when you think about what she's fixed to do here, that shame free, beautiful act she does has nothing to do with sex, but that the reason that sex is special in that way is that it's shame free. So it's a spiritual thing. If you want to have a great sex life as a married couple, well, you work on the spiritual side of things, and I guarantee you the physical will improve. I mean, that is a deep biblical truth.
it is, and not just that. It's physical, it's spiritual, and it's emotional. Mm-hmm. All tied into one relationship, and that's what makes it special. And that's why to cheapen it and to just whoever, whenever, wherever cheapens that right. Emotional, spiritual, and physical part.
You say, well, how come you're bringing this up before? Because look, what's different than Jesus than any Lifetime movie you see is that he has no skeletons in his closet. We made that he never sinned, and there's literally no skeleton in his grave because he came back from the dead.
And what's interesting, Jay, is that statement you just made. I made this in my sermon this past week. He didn't experience sin, but that's the only thing that we experienced that he didn't, in terms of, he said he was made like us in every way to understand exactly what it's like to be us. And the one thing he didn't do was sin, because he had to save us from sin. But so in other words, all the experiences we have, the idea of relationships and loving people deeply and being hurt and, all the things that happen to us, suffering, happened to him. Yep. And so he totally understands us. And the only thing he didn't do that we do is sin.
Yeah. And the reason I'm bringing this up is, you got three men here discussing one of the most intimate, pouring your heart out moment in a public way. It's a beautiful thing. And, so most people, they have trouble even relating to this. So they try to screw it up and make it something sexual or something. It's completely the way the world is. Because they can't figure out how someone would do this without having some kind of selfish motive, and I think they missed the whole point. So with that setup, which was quite the setup, because this is a moving story. It is something, especially when you look at what their world was like. So we'll kind of help that as we go along here. So 14:1 of March. Now the Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread were only 2 days away, and the chief priests and the teacher of the law were looking for some way to arrest Jesus and kill him. So same theme. That's in all the...
That's been going on since he got to Jerusalem.
But not during the feast, they said, or the people may riot. So this is like turned into a Godfather movie here from their... That's right. And these are religious people.
Yeah.
They're looking for a way to...
The moment to whack him.
Hit on it. Yeah, to whack him. But they're like, it's just the political structure, climate is not good. We don't want the people right. So while he was in Bethany, reclining at the table in the home of a man known as Simon the leper, a woman, and we know it's Mary from the other... if you read all four accounts, you'll get a way more detailed version of what happened. And I think this is the only one that said they're at... just think, they're at a house in the home of a man who's known as Simon the leper, which again just shows you how Jesus operated.
That's right.
What did this guy look like?
This guy was a pariah. The one thing you didn't hang around in those days was lepers. They usually got shipped off someplace. So
a woman, Mary, came with an alabaster jar. And look, I looked into every detail of this. I mean, even the jar itself was usually heirlooms of great worth. This was their, because back then, you also didn't have running water. You didn't have deodorant, and so perfume was something they used to. I mean, let's face it, they
cover up the body odor.
they stank.
It stank.
Yeah,
Your feet stunk because it's dirty, and
I would read that usually when people entered the house, they would like put just a dab on your head, just because you're dirty. Well, they're not gonna go take a shower, like we do. So then it says she had the alabaster jar, very expensive perfume, year's wages, some of the others say, made of pure nard. I looked that up. It's basically in the honeysuckle line of, if you ever smelled that, the honeysuckles, some form of that, flowery type smell. She broke the jar. That's why I brought that up. Usually the jar itself was worth a lot of money, not discounting the. So she's just like,
going all the way with
she
it.
don't care what it costs, has no regard to the financial. One of the preachers I heard give a lesson on this was like, this was kind of like, gold is now. This is something you put under your bed in case there's a crisis or a famine, and she broke it, the entire jar, and poured the perfume on his head. Now look, and some of you have already looking ahead, but if you think about something being broken and poured out, well, we know what's fixing to happen to Jesus, especially after he gives the speech about the Lord's Supper. His body was broken and he poured his blood out. I mean, you think that's a coincidence? I do not. So verse 4, some of those present, and we get the names of them in
the John account.
Yeah, we're saying indignantly to one another, and some of them say they rebuked her harshly. Oh, yeah, that's coming up here in 5. But they're basically yelling at her. Why this waste of perfume? It could have been sold for more than a year's wages and the money given to the poor. And they rebuked her harshly. Now, Jesus says, leave her alone. Said Jesus, why are you bothering her? She has done a beautiful thing to me. The poor you always have with you, and you can help them anytime you want. So he was not saying we don't care about the poor. I think this actually escalates what she did, because he's like, this is even more important of that, and we know how important it is to help the poor. She did what she could. She poured perfume on my body beforehand to prepare for my burial. So there was something to this breaking and pouring out. I tell you the truth. Now listen to this statement. Wherever the gospel is preached throughout the world, which is fixing to happen, what she has done will also be told in memory of her. And it was told by all 4 of the gospel writers. Then Judas Iscariot, one of the 12, went to the chief priests to betray Jesus. So you have this double story going on, this lie that he's living. They were delighted to hear this and promised to give him money. This is now this same one accusing her of wasting the money.
Yeah, we know from John, he was the one that brought up the idea about this money could have been sold to help.
This is a bad bunch of people here.
Well, yeah.
So in the John 12, I do think that it adds.
Hang on, Jace. Let's take a break. One of the things I love about the holiday season and the Christmas season in particular is highlighting the birth of Christ also highlights the importance of life. I always tend to think of Mary, this young teenage, not quite wed mother who had a decision to make. And she made a decision, of course, for life. And that decision was to bring Jesus into the world. One of our sponsors is a group called 40 Days for Life. And that's their whole goal and purpose, is to help young women, especially, and also young men, to be a part of a process that chooses life. They do it through prayer. They do it through information. They have over 1 million volunteers in 1,000 cities. They hold prayer vigils. They're not combative with young women. They're trying to help them, but they're very prayerful because they want them to make better decisions. So we love these guys. We love what they stand for. They've been on our podcast before, and we just want to encourage you to get behind them. Check out their locations, their podcast. They have a free magazine. If you go to 40daysforlife.com, you can find out all the great stuff they're doing, maybe to get involved and volunteer and be a part of what they're doing. So check them out. That's 40daysforlife.com and get involved.
It adds a key element that I wanted to read. So in John 12 in verse 2, verse 1, let me just read it. 6 days before the Passover, Jesus arrived in Bethany where Lazarus lived. So
remember, he had just raised Lazarus on his way coming to
remember,
Jerusalem.
Bethany was his little community. This is where he hung out during this whole week. He would go there every night.
Right.
So here a dinner was given, and we know it was at Simon the leper's house, which is not funny, but it's just like,
it is funny.
If you were doing a movie about this, it's just not like the movies you see portrayed of Jesus. He's hanging out with the biggest ragtag bunch of crew you've ever seen. They all look rough, and they're fishermen. I know how commercial fishermen smell. But you can't wash the smell off. Remember, Phil? We did it for years.
Oh, yeah.
And even Miss Kay would be like,
They literally could
y'all
smell us coming, but the kicker was we couldn't smell each other.
No, after a while.
You wallow in it long enough, you don't smell it anymore.
No.
Because it's your livelihood.
That's right.
Yeah.
You were putting your livelihood in a tub, and they tend to have a smell to them, all of you. It's sweat mixed with fish slime.
That's right.
To us, it was our only way to survive.
It's like if you walk out behind a seafood restaurant and you smell it, you think, man, but that's what it takes
time to
get
time,
seafood on the table.
Jase, from time to time, I look back at the way we survived being fishermen, and it's amazing, Jase, that it ended up like it has.
Exactly. So, but, it's strong evidence that there is a God.
Yeah.
So, look, here at dinner, verse 2 was given in Jesus' honor. Because he was raised from the dead. I mean, he raised Lazarus from the dead. So, and they're just acknowledging. Just think about. You think, well, why were they doing this in Jesus' honor? I mean, he hadn't died, been buried, and raised yet. We raised Lazarus, but think of the health care that he had taken care of in these 3 years. Think about how many people. I mean, you're talking about people even now.
Forget about Obamacare. Jesus care was.
And wearing a mask and all this and, vaccines and all this. Jesus is literally curing epidemics of ailments all over their world. And now he's raised a guy from the dead. Now, you want a health care plan? Not only will I cure you, even if you die, I'll bring you back from the dead. I mean, it's incredible. So they had an honor. So, and you remember Martha's role, and she's in here several times. She serves. She's taking care of all what needs to be. And look, we need that, and we all have different personalities. So while Lazarus was among those reclining at the table with him, Mary took a pint of pure nard, an expensive perfume. So we know it's the same story. She poured it on Jesus' feet. Now bring in that element. Now here's where the intimacy comes in this, and wiped his feet with her hair. So back in the day, you do the study. So she had to take her hair down. Well, when you take your hair down, you don't do that in public. They didn't do that back. You do that at home in your bedroom. And that's where all this kind of uncomfortable thing happened, because she's doing this in public. There's nothing sinister. There's nothing sexual about it. She's doing it in public in front of people because she realizes, and I think she realizes it. I'll give you my theory. If you turn back to John 11, well, Jesus is going to raise Lazarus. Now, I just wanted to point out one verse in 11:32 when Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, this is before Jesus raised him, she fell, looky here, at his feet again. You know, I got to looking, and in Luke 10, she also did the same thing. Luke 10:39, you'll remember that story. And I was like, boy, she spent a lot of time at Jesus' feet. and even from learning and teaching. So Luke 10:39, see, I'll read 38. As Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. She had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. So you're seeing, that's why she got it. You just think about it. And so at the end of chapter 11 in John, well, what was the result of Jesus raising Lazarus from the dead? Well, they wanted to kill Jesus. So you got to remember, she was fully aware of this. And I think she figured it out somewhere in here. They're going to kill him. Mm-hmm. And it's his plan.
Jase, to bolster your point, you didn't...
Got to remember, by the time you get to this event, the what he said he was going to do made it plain, and the disciple.
But I'm saying nobody else is getting it. But go ahead.
Let me read this. John 11:32, right before he raised him. When Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. So to bolster your point, there was another example where she was at the feet of Jesus.
She was strong in the faith.
Yeah.
So I kind of I wanted to read all that in detail because, I wrote down 3 points. I don't know if you're going to preach this, Al, are y'all going through Mark?
Eventually.
This was pretty good.
Yeah.
So
I'm always up for a 3-point.
This is from John 12. So the first thing she showed was unconditional love. Because you just think about this. Here's a woman who women were not esteemed back then. And she did something in public that you just shouldn't be doing, but she didn't care. You know what I mean? She was like, and I mean didn't care in a good way.
Right. She didn't care what others thought about her.
She did not care what others thought. They're yelling at her.
Jesus, some from his own group. I mean, his own apostles.
She's doing something that you, in an intimate way, that you would only do to someone, and they all know that Jesus is not interested in anything sexual or anything, but she knew that too.
Yep.
But she was preparing him for his burial because she knew he was going to die. And she's wiping, and she's crying, and she's wiping his feet, which is another thing, which is back then their feet were deemed, the worst thing on you.
Well, they were walking for miles in sandals in the dust, and you've been there, Jase. I mean,
I ran 2 years one time without any shoes, shoeless.
What were the state of your feet during that period of time?
You would not have believed it. Miss Kay, your mother, I would prop my feet up.
Oh, no.
And I said, got some thorns.
Oh, I thought you were going to say she would like wash
your
them
feet
with
and
pour. She had needles.
Lard.
We had a stash of needles, and she would take the thorns out of my feet. Thick calluses. Like most people don't realize how tough humans' feet, but if they go barefooted a couple of years, as in my 20s, I was a heathen, but the tread was thick. I could walk on hot pavement; it wouldn't bother me because it was callous. It was just.
So this was like
And Jace's point is, all their feet, they look rough. I mean, because their feet were really rough.
So in your rebellion, you also rebelled against shoes. Just
I did.
As a general. Okay, I got it.
Under the auspices of who is a man. Who's a man?
I got you. Let's take another break. Welcome back to Unashamed. 'Tis the season, as they say. It's Christmas time, which is always a favorite. I do love giving people ideas about things they can get. And if you go to philmerch.com, use the promo code Phil20. Got a lot of Unashamed gear. that's there. Make great gifts. There's some uncanceled stuff there. Love Always Protects is a great t-shirt. So if you're looking at a Christmas idea, check out philmerch.com. Use the promo code PHIL20 to save you some money and get a great gift.
So it's uncomfortable. It's what'd you say? It's scandalous.
Scandalous.
But now it's like borderline getting weird here.
Awkward.
Because she's actually
In any age,
getting
Jace.
her hair dirty. It's like your hair's getting dirty from his feet.
The evil mind can't see the goodness in this.
That's it.
A woman's on her knees, and from a man says, "Yeah, they have."
It's like every movie that you watch, when all of a sudden the husband is away and then the woman comes, it always ends sinfully.
That's right.
But in this case, no. And that's why Jesus called it beautiful, because it was a completely spiritual thing. You have a person who has no shame in this moment, because she realizes the bigger picture.
There was no lust there.
No.
None. And so,
which would be a good thing for America to realize.
Oh, man.
So in this unconditional love moment, the old Keller, that this was he had 3 points to this act right here. He had she wasn't worried about the cost. She would give anything.
Yeah.
Well, that's obvious, because that's why the argument ensued. That was with the breaking of the jar. So by breaking of the jar and pouring it out, she wasn't worried about cost. She would give anything she had.
Nor reputation or anything.
Well, so when she gets to the feet, she's given up her control. So I think that's where you get the reputation, and that's why I said it was she had no shame. So she was given everything she had. So, and by letting her hair down, she gave up everything. She was basically declaring, "I give up everything I am." So you just think about it. She would give anything. She gave up everything she has, and then she's given up everything I am, because she's actually enjoying this. She doesn't care what anybody thinks, including the religious people. She only cares about what Jesus thinks in this moment. And what did he think? He thought it was awesome.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because she got it. But really, when you think about that and who God is and him calling us to be holy because he's holy, this is something we all go through. But it usually takes us a while to mature and get there. And that, because most people wouldn't want to do this in public. Why? For fear of persecution or embarrassment.
And he's close to death, but what she was doing solidifies the fact that he's going to save us forever.
Exactly. Well, and a good question to be asked is, if you say this is a great act of unconditional love, well, when you think about the opposite, what is conditional love or conditional faith? Well, you do something so you can get something. Now, look, try that in marriage.
It's tried every day.
This is why we
every day.
struggle. This is why we argue. So I wrote this down. Am I using God to achieve my goals, or am I letting God use me to reach his goals?
Yep.
Really, that's what this is about.
That's it.
I mean, and you're seeing that. That's why God, through Jesus, called this a beautiful thing.
Which is exactly, I think you're right on it there, because I think what makes this so unique and distinct is out of every interaction we've been seeing, it's always someone approaching Jesus with some kind of thing in mind they want to get done. We want to trip him up. We want to do this. We want to do that. We want to get healed. We want to get something for ourselves. This is the first thing we've seen here in a long time in the story where someone comes and it's all about Jesus. I mean, it is totally about him. This woman has made herself, no matter what she cares whether people think about it or not, she has totally emptied herself and everything she has. It seems like this was probably her best possession she owned.
Well, yeah, and that's why you get the idea. She would give up everything. So like this is the opposite of the rich young ruler.
That's
You'll
right.
sell everything you have. No, she's actually doing it without being told.
That's right.
And I think this is the key. And enjoying it and liking it. She's not doing this, I got to obey you. And it's because I'm making, that sort of a joke because of how people are now. It's like begrudgingly obedience to God is, it's not really being obedient because God wants your heart. And I think that's what you're seeing here.
And isn't she a preview of post, resurrected Jesus? She's a preview of what we do.
Exactly.
I mean,
but the fact that she figured this out beforehand,
it's
which
incredible.
is why I brought up the point, but she was sitting at Jesus's feet listening. Well, after a while, she got it.
She got it.
And it wasn't, Martha gets kind of thrown under the bus here doing other things, but we all tend to do that. We get so busy doing the little things there. You can't underestimate the power of listening to Jesus.
And you remember Jesus told Martha that because she was kind of complaining about Mary. She says, she won't help me. She just keeps listening to you. And he's like, he didn't rebuke her harshly. He just said, just leave her alone. She's doing what she needs to do. You keep doing what you do and let her do what she does.
I mean, I hope that's a theme that you picked up on of this podcast. Because whatever you're doing, whatever ministry you're involved in, or wherever you're at on your journey here, even if you don't believe and you're trying to figure this out, you have to ask that question: where is Jesus in all this? God chose to reveal himself through Jesus. So whatever you do, there has to be a constant, steady influx of the red letters of this Bible in your mind.
Correct.
That is called listening to Jesus. That's somebody put them in red, and that's why. And this is where you eventually hope to get to, which is this, because then you're ready to be used by God because you're not worried about being persecuted. You don't care what other people think.
You're not worried about reputation.
Yeah. That's what I love about the story. Because look, in our world today, especially in the social media world, I mean, the number one thing in a teenager's mind, because I'm dealing with a lot of teenagers these days, is what do people think about me? That is the whole drive of social media. So here you see a story like this, which is the first quality you
The
saw.
only like she got here was Jesus.
That's it.
One thumbs up.
One
like.
I have that written down now, which is amazing.
Let's take our last break.
But that one like was a big one because then everybody's like, whoa, he likes this. Why does he? And it makes them realize what this really is all about. But this is confidence. So it was unconditional love, and then confidence was number 2, which we talked about because she didn't care. She was confident. Because for a woman to do this in this culture, and the intimate thing of letting the hair down and the wiping the dirty feet with her hair. I mean, she was confident in the Lord, period. One like. And the third thing, which is what we've already talked about, is she understood the plan. And that's why we had all those references. She got it. She got the scheme of redemption before the scheme of redemption was revealed. Yep. Now, she did have Lazarus raised, and she was an eyewitness to that. I'm sure
and Lazarus was at the dinner.
And he's at the dinner. I'm sure that got the wheels turning.
That's right.
But and all these plots to kill Jesus, and she's like, why is he here? And she's listening to all this, I'm leaving. I'm not going to leave you as orphan. He just had that. And
she was saying, I matter, and he knows it.
He knows
it.
That's a good point, Dad, because you're exactly right. Her confidence,
I matter.
Her confidence came from Jesus.
That's right.
And how he felt about it. And really, shouldn't all of us view it that way?
Oh.
I mean, Jase, you talked about it. Man, could we not solve the world's ills, including social justice and all this, and this look at ourselves if we only were concerned about how Jesus saw it?
It's a gigantic wave of sin and misery.
It is. And we're not perfect. I mean, we're sinners like everybody else, but the difference is we gain our confidence, just like Mary did, because we know Jesus knows us. we know he looks at us. He said, "Oh, leave Jase alone. He's my son. He loves me. He's willing to give everything for me. And when you know he's sticking up for you, I mean, what else could you possibly need?"
I mean, I think I've just kind of avoided this passage before because it's I felt like a chick flick moment, but boy, when you really look into it, I mean, man, there's something beautiful, but there's something powerful about this because at the end of the day, we're all flawed and we got problems and we like to keep everything to ourselves, and you just see somebody with this kind of faith and that kind of courage. Because look, I mean, I'm going to say this to me as a man who is, if I saw something going down, I would hope I would immediately run to the front of the line and display courage. But you try to get me to share my innermost feelings, boy, I'm a coward then. Yeah. And so when I realized how hard and difficult this must have been for, and I'm listening to Jesus on this. I mean, man, he scolded them for making fun of her and rebuking her. And he did have that famous statement. He's like, man, this is a beautiful thing right here. I just think it's a really powerful, moving moment. And he attached it to the gospel being preached. He's like, wherever the gospel is going to go out, just think where the gospel's gone out from this moment throughout the history of the world. Oh. He's like, we're going to tell this story.
Reached billions. Billions have been reached.
I mean, now he elevated that up to, you want to change your life in a powerful way, you have this kind of faith. Right. You display this faith after listening to who Jesus is.
Yep. But it's like everything else in the story. You also see the specter that evil's always there. Because in this moment of beauty,
always there.
In this moment of beauty that people should have been marveling at,
this group is we're going to kill him.
You got Judas over here.
This poor woman is on her knees,
rebuking her for the deal,
and they're wasting the money. Like, can you believe? Boy.
And she knew they were going to say, "Yeah, look at her."
Well, but Judas goes straight from this beautiful setting, and the Mark account gives us to us. He goes straight to that, to who? The chief priest, and says, "Okay, I'm ready to betray him. I'm ready to help you complete your plan."
But Al, he
left this beautiful setting of submission and surrender to go and say, you need to kill him. I mean, that's how upset he was in the moment. Because it was almost like a rage moment when he went, because he goes straight there. It's like
he did. But what I found fascinating is the other disciples were rebuking her too.
There were others.
Now he carries it further. But to me, it would be just like us. We do the same thing. If we saw somebody with a past do something like this, look, we would have two things. You're wasting your money. We would immediately jump to conclusions because that's what we do. Because I think the other disciples, they were just kind of looking at it from the outside. They weren't getting to the heart of the matter. And they'd say, look, this is inappropriate for you to be letting your hair down. I mean, this is Jesus. Don't be throwing yourself, what are you, a prostitute?
Right.
We would address these issues.
It's kind of amazing that most people still admit immorality, let your hair down. You know what I'm saying?
Right. It's actually a positive thing on this. It's because really when you think about it, I'm glad you said that, because in the practical sense, religious people are fine going to church, putting on their Sunday best, acting like everything is great. But really what God is after is he wants to see when you let your hair down and what's really going on. Right. Now, if you're ready to do that, he can use you.
Yeah. Yep.
But if you're going to try to give a portrayal of, I got it all figured out, and when you see, I love that about, the church that brought you to the Lord, Phil, and where we meet, there is an element, you'll see, let's face it, life's a lot of people who would be considered
the downtrodden.
The phrase, the people you just had a rough go of it.
That's right.
Yep.
And you do see some of these type of moments here where they've lost all shame, all reputation. They don't care. That's their life has been just so horrible that it is an expression of like in this kind of moment.
Well, we had
So you never want to be coy and say, "Oh, roll your eyes," and say, "Oh boy."
we had one on the podcast. You know, Rucker leads our CR, but he told his story on this podcast of a guy who's sitting in prison thinking he's either going to die or spend the rest of his life behind bars, and he finally surrendered. You know, when he got over here and he saw Jesus, and now he's helping other people do it. I mean, you're right, Jason. I mean, the thing is, this story lives on and it goes on. And, you know, I thought about it that Jesus obviously is so invested in Mary's heart, because you remember back when he comes upon the situation with Lazarus, first Martha's like, if you'd been here, he wouldn't have died, you know, and they have a conversation. And then Mary comes and falls at his feet, and she says the same thing Martha said. If you'd been here, he wouldn't have died. And he's like, well, where is he? And then it said he became emotional, and then he weeps. But Mary's the one that got him to that place. He saw everybody crying. And look, Jesus was weeping and had this emotional moment, and he knew he was about to raise him. So that shows you what an investment into this, especially this woman, her life was for Jesus too. He saw the purity in her. And
it just shows you that when we hurt, he hurts for us. Even though we know everything is going to be, he knows everything's going to be, and hopefully we do, that everything's going to be okay. I mean, to me, that is the Christian life. He never said, I'm going to take away all your problems and all the pain. And no. In fact, he says the exact opposite. All these guys were going to be sheep to be slaughtered, go through miserable deaths and torture. And I mean, he gets into that in graphic detail. But we know when we hurt, he hurts, even though we do win in the end and everything's going to be okay. That's the God we serve.
Yeah, I said that. I did a funeral for a little baby that passed, and those are always hard and sad. And I mentioned that, Jace. I said, you know, I think there's weeping today in more places than just here. Because
how many funerals have you done where there was a little box?
You know, I've done 5 where it was the little 2-foot casket. There was an infant inside, and I remember every one of them distinctly. Two of the 5 were twins as well, and these were babies that were born and didn't make it but a few weeks. And every one has an indelible impact on me, just being the person trying to offer some encouragement to family, because you look at that and you're looking for a lifetime of all these great things, and you're praying for that miracle. You know, God, please save my child. And it's in those moments when you realize how powerful Jesus' connection is to us, because then you got to move, you know, beyond. So it was moving to me to think about this context, that Jesus has that compassion for us, that when we're weeping, he's weeping.
He's weeping. And there will be a day where there'll be no more tears, unless they're of joy.
That's exactly right. All right, we're out of time. I do have a comparison I want to make to this story in another place that we didn't get to, and we'll do that in the overtime. If you want to follow us over, it's blazetv.com/unashamed is where you subscribe to get our overtime segment.
Thanks for listening to the Unashamed podcast. Help us out by rating us on iTunes. And don't miss an episode by subscribing on YouTube, and be sure to click that little bell to get notified about new episodes. And for even more content that you won't get anywhere else, subscribe to Blaze TV at blazetv.com/unashamed.